Have you ever stopped to think about who the law is actually built to see? I'm not talking about the rules we all know, but about the hidden architecture, this invisible code that decides who even counts as a person in the first place and who gets left in the shadows. We're going to dive into that code because it was forged thousands of years ago, and believe it or not, it's still running our world today. You know, when we look at a raven, its feathers just look black. But for a lot of other creatures, ones that can see in ultraviolet, those same feathers are this shimmering, iridescent rainbow. Well, the big idea we're exploring here is that our legal system kind of has the same problem. It sees things in black and white, but it completely misses this whole invisible spectrum of power. And it's all hidden inside this one single concept: personhood.
So that leads to a pretty huge question, right? What if our legal system is, by its very design, blind? What if the way it's built actually prevents it from seeing who really has power and who is just being controlled? That's the mystery we're going to try and unravel.
To find the source code for this legal blindness, we have to go back, way, way back, to ancient Rome. Because this is the place where the idea of a legal person gets split off from the simple fact of being a human being. The key is this one word: persona. Now, in Roman law, a persona wasn't you, the individual. It literally meant the mask an actor would wear in a play. And in the eyes of the law, that mask was everything. It didn't just show who you were, it created your legal identity. It gave you the right to speak and act in court. If you didn't have a mask, legally speaking, you didn't exist. And the Romans were incredibly systematic about who got to wear a mask. You had to pass 3 tests, no exceptions. First, were you free or a slave? Second, were you a Roman citizen or a foreigner? And third, were you the male head of the household, or were you a dependent like a wife or a child? And the consequences here were absolutely profound. If you failed even one of those tests, poof, you were either partially or completely invisible to the law. A slave wasn't a person at all, but res, a thing, like a piece of furniture. Only the free, male, citizen patriarch passed all 3 tests. He was the only one fully seen by the system. This was the original blueprint for legal recognition. Now, you'd think this system would just fade away with the Roman Empire, right? But it didn't. It just adapted. And this is where things start to get really weird, where this kind of bizarre inversion starts to happen. The church kept the whole idea alive with something called the persona ficta, or fictional person. They applied the legal mask to things like monasteries so they could own land forever. Then, as business and trade took off, this incredibly powerful tool got handed over to corporations, giving them the power to act like these immortal, legally protected people. And this created this massive paradox that's hard to wrap your head around. The legal system got incredibly good at seeing and empowering things that were completely artificial, corporations, while at the exact same time, millions of living, breathing human beings were kept legally in the shadows, their personhood either denied or just incomplete. So why don't we notice this more? Well, it's a classic case of the invisible gorilla. You know that experiment? Legal experts get so wrapped up in the details, in counting the basketball passes, so to speak, that they completely miss the gorilla in the room, the fundamental architecture that's deciding who even gets to be on the court in the first place. Okay, so if the system makes us blind, we're going to need a tool to help us see. And that tool is what we're going to call the Personhood Lens. It's basically a diagnostic kit for figuring out how legal visibility gets handed out or taken away. The lens works by breaking personhood down into 3 simple coordinates. First, there's your official status in the system. Are you a citizen, an employee, a contractor? Second, there's your capacity. What are you legally allowed to do, like vote or own property? And third, your visibility. Do institutions and databases actually recognize that you exist? You really only get full personhood when all 3 of those things line up. And when you start using this lens, you see the gaps immediately. A citizen, high status, high capacity, high visibility. But what about a gig worker? Their legal status as a contractor is deliberately kept low, which limits their capacity to get benefits and makes them partially invisible to labor laws. And then there's our digital self. Its status is, well, ambiguous. We have very low control over it, but its visibility to corporations, oh, that is incredibly high because of its data value. And that right there, that brings us to the most urgent battlefield for this fight today, our digital lives. Because that same architectural trick that was used to empower corporations, it's now being used on our data. Yup, the great legal inversion is repeating itself. Only this time, it's not being debated in courtrooms or parliaments. It's being written directly into the code that runs our world.
I mean, just look at this comparison. Our data, this digital shadow of us, it has enormous economic visibility. It gets treated like a person. It acts on its own in markets. It's bought and sold. But the actual human being behind that data, we lose control. We lose capacity. Our identity gets chopped up and sold off. The law is getting really, really good at seeing the data, but it's becoming blind to the person. That is the new invisibility. So, to fix this, we have to start demanding a new ethical principle. The way we are seen by an algorithm must reflect our true status as human beings. It's time to reconnect the digital mask to the human face. So what's the path forward? Look, this isn't about just passing a few new privacy laws. It's much bigger than that. It's about a fundamental shift in how we see the very systems that we ourselves built. Think of it like this. If the first Enlightenment was all about teaching humanity how to use reason, then maybe the second Enlightenment has to be about learning to see the invisible structures we build with that reason. We have to become aware of the systems that are granting or denying recognition all around us. And that brings us right back to where we started. The future isn't going to belong to those with the best rules, but to those who can see the full spectrum of power. The raven was never just black, and the law was never just a neutral set of rules. It's a prism, and everything depends on how we choose to shape it and where we choose to point it. So I'll just leave you with this final thought. If the law, at its core, is an economy of attention, if it's a system for deciding what society notices and what it ignores, then maybe the most radical, most powerful act of justice we can perform is to become conscious of our own perception, to choose, actively and with purpose, who and what we are willing to see.